Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to be talking to all of you this afternoon. My name is Julia Kaufman. I'm the co-director of the American Educator Panels, and I lead the American Mathematics Educator Study, from which the data that I'm going to share today comes. This is going to be a brisk 45-minute webinar where we share and reflect upon some findings from our study, which fielded surveys to nationally representative samples of teachers and principals through the American Educator Panels at RAND. And the topic I'm going to talk about specifically today is achievement level grouping or tracking. Tracking is something many schools do to some extent, and it plays some really useful purposes, but it also has some downsides. So we'll talk today about data that we've gathered that tells us a lot about how tracking is happening in schools and provides a little bit of information about the kinds of ways that we could provide better achievement level grouping or think about achievement level grouping differently. I'm really pleased today to have two other participants with me on this webinar. One is Ma Bernadette Andres Salgarino. She's the Assistant Director for Integrated STEAM at the Santa Clara County Office of Education, one of the largest county offices in California, and is also the President of the California Mathematics Council. Her work focuses on co-developing, implementing, monitoring, and sustaining support systems to build teacher leadership capacity. She's also a National Board Certified Teacher and a member of the California Mathematics Curriculum Framework Committee. I'd also like to introduce Paige Darstein. Paige is the Manager of Academic Readiness on the Middle Grades Initiative Team at the Commit Partnership. Paige oversees advanced math pathways in grades 4th through 8th, and its role in preparing students to succeed in high-quality high school and post-secondary pathways. Prior to working at Commit, Darstein had various experiences working in K-12 education, including designing engineering curriculum and teaching Algebra 1, robotics, and physics. All right, well, without further ado, let me just give you an overview of what we're going to talk about in the next 45 minutes. We're going to start with an overview of the American Mathematics Educator Study and the RAND survey panel. And then I'm going to go through some findings, not very much, but some of our key findings from our study on tracking policies across the nation and in 4 of the largest states in the United States: California, Florida, New York, and Texas. And then I'll move to our panelists who come to us from California and Texas. And we'll talk a little bit about state and district efforts to think about achievement level grouping and what it means in the classroom. And then we will have a brief time for Q&A. If you have any questions, we do have a Q&A feature here in the webinar, so you can post your questions. If we can answer them in real time by just typing an answer, we will, or we might save the questions for the end, depending on who can answer them. All right, but before we get deep into it, I just want to do a brief poll of who is in the room. So you'll see that poll pop up on your screen in a moment. And then we'd like you to just share with us who you are, where you're coming from. If you're a teacher, a school district leader, a researcher, a policymaker, or government staff, staff from an organization that supports teachers, staff from an organization that develops instructional materials, or something else. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to respond to that poll. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, a spread. A teacher, great. Some leaders, researchers, a bunch of others. We missed a category somewhere in there. If you are another and you want to post in the Q&A who you are, feel free to do that. Okay. Now I'm going to go on to an overview of the American Mathematics Educator Study. So first of all, I want to introduce you to the RAND survey panels. So RAND runs 6 survey panels. 3 of them are a part of our educator panels. So we have the American Teacher Panel. That's our largest panel. It has 28,000 teachers in it. And then we have the American School Leader Panel, which includes a nationally representative sample of principals, as well as our American School District Panel, which includes superintendents. We also have a household panel that has been longstanding at RAND, the American Life Panel, along with the American Youth Panel, which is one of our newest panels, and our American Parent Panel. These are recruiting both youth and parents, respectively. These include people who have been randomly selected through probability-based methods and invited to participate in panel surveys. These participants are selected to reflect national characteristics of the population they represent. So most of the data that I'm going to share today is from the principal surveys that we fielded through the American Mathematics Educator Study. So they're representative of K through 12 principals in schools across the nation, both in terms of demographics of the schools in which they serve and principals' own level of experience and training. These data are weighted afterward to provide nationally representative estimates. Now, when we sample and survey, we also randomly select the participants from our panels, but the weighting is an important part of the process just to account for differential responses to our survey invitations and really ensure that the data we present to you is fully representative. I need to mention that we make our data, methods, and findings available to the public for free. We think that public access to information is really important, and we're not the only people that think so. We participate in the American Association of Public Opinion Research Transparency Initiative that allows us to provide information that we are public, and all of our information is public, all of our data is public, all of our reports are public, so you can access them for free. Now, let me provide a little bit more information about the American Mathematics Educator Study. We started it last year, and we've been really excited that we can field surveys to nationally representative samples of math teachers, as well as K through 12 principals. And we've been fielding them since just last year. So what I'm going to be presenting is data from the spring 2024 survey. I'm sorry, from the 2024 survey through 2027. We actually fielded in spring 2023 for these data. So I just want to clarify that, sorry. We are going to be presenting data from the spring 2023 status survey, but then the Ames has been fielded and it will be fielded through spring 2027. We also have oversamples of school leaders and teachers in those 4 big states, California, Florida, New York, and Texas, as well as principal oversamples at the high school level in Texas and Washington. So I'm going to give you an overview of our achievement level grouping data, the data that tells us what's happening in schools. I'm just going to give a little bit of background before I dive into that. US K through 12 schools have long wrestled with this dilemma of making sure that all kids have ample opportunities, but are also providing instruction at the right level of challenge for all children. Grouping students by achievement level is a common strategy, although we lack information about how much achievement level grouping is happening and when. So that's data we're going to provide to you today. And it's a strategy that's used to ensure that all students get instruction at the appropriate level of challenge for them. But a lot of research suggests it has significant drawbacks. Black, Hispanic, low-income children, they are often disproportionately placed in lower tracks. And there's been research suggesting that students on these tracks often receive lower quality instruction with less conceptual understanding activities and more procedural work, more rote memorization as compared to students on higher tracks. Tracking in math also presents a unique issue. It can limit students' access to advanced math course taking. And specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about algebra in 8th grade, which is one advanced course that's often offered at the 8th grade level and can pave the way to more advanced courses. And if you are tracked into a lower achieving group that doesn't take the courses that will prepare you for algebra in 8th grade, you can miss out on that opportunity. So the key findings I'm going to talk about today. One is that grouping students by achievement level happens early, sometimes as early as elementary school, maybe not into classes right away, but even within classes, there can be achievement level grouping, and likely has major implications for who gets access to advanced math classes. Schools use a lot of different sources of data to track students. Most do report using interim assessments or recommendations, but we'll make the point here that schools still rely on different kinds of data, which can have different implementations for how students are grouped. And most schools, lastly, don't discuss how students are placed in math courses with parents, which limits the extent to which they can intercede and talk to others about how their student is placed and whether they should be placed somewhere else. All this data is taken from our 2 reports that I'm going to put into the chat after I am done talking, because it looks like I can't do it now while I'm in presentation mode. But we do have 2 public reports that are out right now, and those are the URLs so that you can access them after the presentation if you'd like. So first major finding, grouping students by achievement level within or into math classes starts as early as elementary school. You can see here that between 30 and 50% of principals just at the elementary level indicated some level of grouping. If you look at that set of 5 bars there on the leftmost side of the screen. But by middle school, at least some level of grouping is either happening within or into classes. So to get this data, we did ask principals. We said some schools organize math instruction differently for students with different achievement levels. What is your school's policy? And they could pick one of 3 options. So they could pick students are not grouped by achievement level. Students are typically grouped by achievement level within their math class, or students are typically grouped by achievement level into math classes. And as I said here, that into bar gets bigger as you move from K through 5, 6 through 8, to 9th through 12th grade. Particularly, what's interesting is that there are some differences across states. So for example, California principals indicate doing less grouping into math classes compared to principals in Florida. Now, we also asked principals, if they said that their students were grouped by achievement level, we asked a follow-up question. How are students grouped by achievement level into math classes at your school? And they could say students are grouped semester by semester, course by course. That's the darkest part of the bar at the bottom. Or students are grouped into certain pathways, so for sets of courses, or neither. So you can see here that a lot of principals indicated that students are grouped semester by semester or course by course. But looking again, we also observed some differences by state. So it looks like students are grouped more course by course in California and Florida, especially by the time you get to the high school level, compared to, I'm sorry, California and New York compared to Florida. Now here's some data on algebra in 8th grade. We asked principals whether their school offers algebra in 8th grade and any student can participate, or whether only students can participate. And this is also some indication of tracking, right? Who can participate are likely those in the higher achievement level groupings. And you can see here that the norm is that my school offers 8th grade algebra and only certain students can participate. And that is less true in California, mostly because we think the advanced math class that is taken at the middle school level is often integrated mathematics rather than algebra. So that's why California principals more likely answered in some cases, my school does not offer 8th grade algebra, but they could also have said, I don't know. We also looked at our 2024 data preliminarily. So just as a reminder, this is spring 2023 data, and we compared that to our 2024 data. And most of these data were fairly comparable, but we are seeing that it looks like algebra in 8th grade is being offered to all students. So that darkest bar, maybe a little more in New York and Texas relative to 2023. But for the most case, these data that I'm showing you from 2023 are generally comparable to what we're seeing in 2024. So the next question to ask about achievement level grouping is how students are grouped when they are grouped. We asked principals that question. What sources of data do you use to group students if they said that they were grouping them into math classes? So these are data that you're looking at just for principals serving in K-8 schools versus high schools, 9th through 12th grade. So you can see here that the 2 most common sources of data for grouping are diagnostic or interim assessments, and then teacher recommendations. But you can see here a whole range of other sources of data that are used. And to be clear, schools might say they use multiple sources of data. For example, you might be using teacher recommendation after you've used assessments to decide who to group. And so teachers might then weigh in after that, or counselors might weigh in. You see that they weigh in more at the high school level than at the K-8 level into how students are placed. As you might imagine, different sources of data are subjective, more subjective maybe than others, and different factors can govern those sources of data and how they place students. For example, you might have 2 students performing at the same level, but one student's parents pushes for them to be in advanced math, whereas another do not, and that can make a difference, whether that student is placed at the appropriate level of challenge. And just the big takeaway for me is that schools need to reflect upon whether they are placing students equitably and whether their students are receiving adequate level of challenge. And they might not even know that until a student is placed potentially and seeing that they're struggling or performing really well. So just important to keep tabs on how students are doing, consulting with the parents and the students to determine which placement would be ideal, thinking through those edge cases where you see students that are performing at the same level on paper, but are placed in different classes, and just ask, why is that? What's going on here? Do I need to shift that student? So this is just data from the 9th, 12th level, just to illustrate that there can be differences state by state in the data that principals use. And in particular, if you look at the top row, you can see here that about 46% of principals nationally at the 9-12 level say that they use required grade level tests for accountability. But that number is much lower in California, and it is much higher in Florida. So there are likely some state factors, maybe related to state policy or other reasons. We're beginning to investigate that to really understand what is going on and why some sources of data are more prevalent in some states compared to others. And the last piece of data that I'm going to share with you before passing the baton over to my panelists is just that when we ask principals whether they report that their school district has a public meeting with parents to discuss math placement, most say no. Now, this is all K-12. You can imagine that those kinds of meetings might be more relevant at the 6 through 8 or 9 through 12 level. And we do see that those percentages are a little higher at the middle school level, for example, when they're more like 30 to 40%. But the big takeaway here is also that majorities of schools do not do public meetings with parents to discuss math placement, which has implications for how much parents may push or even understand the implications of placement. So now I'm just really pleased to have our two panelists here to talk about this in a little bit more depth and maybe provide a little bit more context in states themselves. So our big question for these panelists is, what district or state efforts have you seen that address or mitigate potential negative effects of tracking? So I'm going to turn it over to Paige to talk first, and then Ma Bernadette, again, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. I mean, in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer them as we talk. But we will have some time for Q&A after. So please just type those questions in, so we do have some time, some questions for the Q&A at the end. Thank you. Paige?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so a couple of years ago, another collective impact organization in Central Texas, E3 Alliance, was really instrumental in doing some initial research and data in investigating kind of what our state practices were for placing students into advanced math. And a lot of what they found was aligned with what Julia just shared and some of that data. First of all, they found that students of color who were demonstrating proficiency in 5th grade math based on our state standardized assessment were far less likely to be enrolled in an advanced math pathway in middle school than their white peers who were earning the exact same scores. So when we think about the biggest indicator of a student being placed into advanced math across the nation, but also in Texas, being teacher recommendations, there's a huge window there for human bias to enter into the conversation. And what we were seeing, at least in Texas, is that human bias was manifesting in students being excluded from advanced math in middle school based on race. And I want to be really clear, when I talk about advanced math in terms of Texas, I'm talking about Algebra 1 by 8th grade. And Algebra 1 by 8th grade specifically is a gateway course to take college-aligned courses in high school, which has huge implications in a student's likeliness to enroll in post-secondary education, persist in post-secondary education, and ultimately earn a living wage. So this is really heavy stuff in terms of excluding students from advanced math in middle school. The other thing that we found in doing some of this initial research is that about 36% of school systems across the state of Texas didn't offer advanced math to middle schoolers at all, to any students, which again has implications for those students' access to advanced courses in high school and through post-secondary. So E3 Alliance was really instrumental in kind of sounding the alarm on this issue and raising it to the state level. which eventually resulted in the passage of Senate Bill 2124, or the opt-out bill that passed in 2023. So this bill primarily did two things. First, it required that all school systems across the state of Texas develop an advanced math pathway that culminated in Algebra 1 by 8th grade. The second thing that it did is it required automatic enrollment of all students from 5th grade who achieved or demonstrated proficiency on that 5th grade math benchmark into that advanced math placement in middle school. So the bill was really attempting to kind of mitigate or reduce the human bias that we were seeing affect placement into advanced math courses for students across Texas. And in Dallas County, where I'm located, we've actually already seen some really positive outcomes from this practice. Dallas ISD actually implemented this practice back in 2019, and what they've seen is really exciting. So prior to 2019, only 20% of students in 8th grade across the district were enrolled in Algebra 1. Fast forward to 2023, that number tripled to 60% of students. And what's really, really exciting about this is, although within a span of 4 years, the enrollment in 8th grade Algebra 1 tripled, the pass rate stayed exactly the same. And that's because these students were moved into an advanced math pathway based on demonstrated proficiency. They had demonstrated already that they could and would succeed in an advanced math pathway and 8th grade Algebra 1, and they did. So that's our first big win in terms of equity of access to advanced math. The second thing, if I circle back to the initial issue that this bill was attempting to resolve, Dallas ISD also, prior to implementing this, had about 17% of their Black students enrolled in honors 6th grade math. After this implementation, that number rose to 43%. So another huge win as we talk about equity and access and making sure that all students have an equal opportunity to participate in Algebra 1 by 8th grade and all of the things that come after that. And then outside of just Dallas ISD, as we're talking about the bill language that officially has come out this year, our school system leaders across the county are starting to go a step further, and they're looking at the percentage of students within their districts that have qualified for this advanced math placement and ultimately Algebra 1 by 8th grade. And they're starting to ask questions about how can we ensure that the number of students who are meeting that proficiency benchmark in 5th grade and ultimately having access to Algebra 1, how do we ensure that that number keeps increasing year over year? And what they're doing is starting to have really strategic conversations about prioritizing early numeracy, providing additional math supports to teachers and students in elementary grades to ensure that more and more students are able to meet that benchmark by 5th grade. And on the flip side of that, they're also starting to look really critically at their advanced course options in high schools to ensure that this influx of middle school students that are now taking advanced math, when they transition to high school, they have access to the appropriate advanced courses in high school that are ultimately going to be able to help them reach their college and career goals. So we're seeing a lot of kind of wide-ranging impacts of this bill. Ultimately, most of them are very, very positive. But the official implementation year for the state of Texas as a whole is actually the current school year that we're in. So the 2024-2025 school year is the first implementation year for every district across the state. So we're really excited to continue learning about what implementation looks like and also continue to see the positive impacts for students across Texas.
That's really exciting, Paige. I can't wait to see if our data says anything differently in the next year. But it's an exciting time for Texas. Before I introduce Ma Bernadette, I'll just ask you one question because it was posed to you about Texas. And so I'll ask that to you and then I'll pass it along. So one question was, does Texas have 8th grade math standards that are not algebra? Some schools may be detracking by keeping all students in heterogeneous 6th through 8th classes. Are there ways to accelerate in high school to minimize tracking in middle school? So do you have any thoughts about that question?
So yes, state standards currently in Texas, the on-grade level pathway for 8th graders is 8th grade math. So Algebra 1 is the on-grade level pathway currently for 9th grade. So 8th grade math is technically like pre-algebra. So yes, there are standards that are 8th grade specific. And what this bill actually does is the advanced math pathway that's being created or required to be created across all school systems. It's actually intended to cover 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all within 6th and 7th grade, so that students have access to Algebra 1 by 8th grade.
Great, thank you. So now I'm going to introduce our second panelist, who is coming to us from California, a different state with some different approaches. So Ma Bernadette, I'm really excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Julia. Before I proceed, I'd like to begin by saying that the California Mathematics Council believes that all students should have access to high quality instruction and post-secondary educational opportunities. And we also believe that the students should be engaged in mathematics courses that are modernized and socially just. So as you probably have heard, California recently approved a mathematics framework, and this framework provides guidance to California educators in their role to hold the promise of enabling every California student to become powerful users of mathematics in order for them to better understand and positively impact the world in their careers, in college, and in civic life. And with this framework, recognizes that some students are born with learning challenges and others with learning advantages, and that students have different experiences and opportunities before they arrive at school. It also recognizes that no student's mathematical ability is fixed, that all students are capable of strong learning gains, given effective teaching and support that fosters a growth mindset. And so students should have early, ongoing, and equitable opportunities to develop their abilities. And we know that mathematical excellence can develop or reveal itself at any life stage. So our mathematics framework here in California proposes grouping systems and other supports that keep higher level pathways open to more students for a longer period of time, while enabling our high achieving students to move more rapidly and deeply through content as appropriate. In addition, extra course taking options during the school year or during summer school are also provided so that students may accelerate at any time during middle or high school. So for example, here in the Santa Clara County, a number of our schools here offer acceleration opportunities in the middle grades, 7th or 8th, but none at the earlier grades, like 3rd or 4th. Still with enough support during summer to bridge the understanding of concepts necessary to provide that strong mathematics foundations critical to preparing them for upper level math courses. Several school districts here too offer integrated math 1 or algebra 1 at the 8th grade level. Again, with the provision that our students will continually develop that conceptual understanding and necessary skills to deepen their knowledge of mathematics. So here in Santa Clara, we have programs like Elevate Math through the Silicon Valley Education Foundation. We have the UCube Summer Program. We have STEM Academies. All of those are focused on multi-dimensional approach to mathematics that provide that support as written in the math framework. Also, not just summer, but these classes as well, these bridges continue during school year to support our students with, I would say, fun-filled, problem-based, real-world math learning experiences. Besides that, there are other opportunities and strategies that we do here at the county and as a state as well. One is the strengthening the supply of qualified mathematics teachers in California. We've been trying to do that. We know we lack a lot of math teachers in the classroom right now, but when it comes to learning mathematics, that quality of instruction really matters. And so with significant numbers of our California students ready to move forward in mathematics, guaranteeing that strong instruction from elementary school through high school is really is paramount. Here at the Santa Clara County Office of Education, we have the Education Preparation Program department that house multiple grants to support professionals who are planning to teach. Yes, professional development support is another component to address this issue. And we in California, we have this California Mathematics Science and Computer Science grant. This is a comprehensive, multi-million, multi-agency system designed to provide a sustainable, impactful professional learning infrastructure for mathematics, science, and computer science educators from across the state. For math in this specific grant, the professional development and support is centered on the 3 dimensions of systemic instruction, which is again part of the messaging in the math framework. And these dimensions are assets-based instruction, active engagement, and cultural and personal relevance. And huge part of this professional development system is supporting family engagement. Yes, family engagement and communities. We're so big on that. So many of our school districts here are working tediously to engage our families and communities in the educational process, ensuring that they have a voice in decision about academic opportunities. And this engagement really helps to create that more supportive environment for our students and fosters a collaborative approach to education. You know, we call these initiatives hashtag beyond back to school night, hashtag beyond newsletter. And so districts now, a lot of our districts here offer workshops to empower our parents in truly advocating for their children's right to quality mathematics education. So some programs that we have here are School to Home, which is grant funded, Parent Guardians Academies, Parent Guardian Partnerships, and others. Another strategy too that we've been elevating is the promotion of inclusive curriculum, because we have the new framework. We know textbook adoption is next. And so the framework proposes curricula that truly reflect the diverse perspectives and experiences of our students. So districts right now are working, and even the state, are working to make that education more relevant and engaging for all students through those math lessons and tasks that truly integrate our diverse cultural and historical content into the curriculum, ensuring that those materials are inclusive and really is representative. And of course, there are others like redesigning the course placement systems, monitoring and evaluation, and creating support as well as the structures. I just piggybacking on the creating support structures, it's again, we have those efforts like mentorship programs, tutoring, and targeted interventions that truly aim to support our students who might be disadvantaged by that traditional tracking systems are also in place. We have this grant here at the Santa Clara County called the California Collaborative for Learning Acceleration, CCLA. And this grant, although specific to ELA and mathematics, but for mathematics, we have been providing support to districts through professional development and providing our educators instructional approaches centered on Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, such as how to do flexible grouping, tutoring, one-on-one support, and other differentiation strategies applying the universal design for learning. So it's always been, this has been an exciting year and the years to come for California.
Thank you so much. It was great to hear such different strategies and discussions about what districts and states are doing to really think carefully about equity across our students who are participating in math classes. We have a couple questions. We have a little bit of time for Q&A, maybe about 10 minutes. I know I have some questions for both of you. So one question just for Ma Bernadette. Pamela Birdman just asked, has the California Math Placement Act of 2015 made a difference from your perspective in terms of equitable access to advanced courses? And I actually don't know if there's any research specifically on that act, but I do know that it requires school districts serving pupils entering 9th grade to adopt fair, objective, and transparent math placement policies. And yes, I did Google that to get that exact language. But do you have any thoughts on that, Mom Bernadette?
Well, I can at least say, Pamela, I know I don't have the data as well as to how that equitable access to advanced courses statewide has been done. However, we do have, yeah, thank you so much, Pam. We do have our bold San Francisco Unified School District who had done multi-year long policy to change that tracking options. And I know some of them are in the room. Paul and Angela who has been part of that, and they have shown success in terms of detracking and changing that policy to ensure that 4-year meaningful and relevant courses provided to our students can truly make an impact for those students who were, especially our Black and Brown students, to then access courses beyond Algebra 2, and they have that data. It's also posted and posted at NCTM and so on and so forth. So I truly congratulate them, and that's one of the things, Pamela, that came to my mind.
Yeah, and I love that question because I feel like that's the first step in helping students be placed in a thoughtful way, to just let people know, hey, this is how students are placed. So it's a great question. Thanks, Ma Bernadette, for your thoughts on that. Another question that was asked early on that I just wanted to backtrack to for a minute was just Jill's question. Do you have a sense of what percentage of middle schoolers and what percentage of high schoolers are in a tracked math class? And I'm just going to go back to our data to try to answer that to the extent I can. And so this is a slide we've shown again and again. I think it's just so fascinating because we just didn't have data to this point that helped us understand that. So when I think about tracking, I do think about that dark blue bar. So we ask principals, are students typically grouped by achievement level into math classes? So for example, an honors track, a career track, maybe a lower achieving track. And so those percentages, I think, Jill, do answer to your question, what percentage of middle schoolers and what percentage of high schoolers are in a tracked math class. So I think nationally, about 39% of schools track students. That doesn't ask you that doesn't tell you what percentage of middle schoolers or high schoolers are, but it gives you an idea of the percentage of schools. We could probably answer that question about percentage of students if we dug into our data, which we haven't to date, but that's a great question. And then by the time you get to high school, that's at about 55%. So what does it look like when you're not tracked, right? So nationally at the middle school level, 32% of principals said students are not tracked. And then in 9th, 12, they are not tracked. What that means is hard for us to know. That's one of the drawbacks of surveys. They answer a question and you just want to know so much more about that. But we didn't ask a follow-up question about that. What does that look like? So we imagine what that looks like is potentially students taking universally the same class at each grade level, but we honestly don't know, because for some person, what tracking means might not be the same for another. So maybe students aren't grouped, but maybe they're asked for their preferences or something and then grouped according to that. It's really hard to know. But in general, we think that when students are tracked, they enter into a higher level or a lower level path, and that often will mean nationally taking algebra in 8th grade and then following up with class like geometry, then algebra 2, then potentially pre-calculus and calculus is a very traditional route, but there are other kinds of routes. And I think the big piece that was mentioned before is like calculus. Getting to calculus by 12th grade is one potential goal for students. It doesn't have to be what all students do, but many universities do include calculus as a requirement for acceptance, right? And so you can imagine if you're in a class that's tracked and you don't really get to that point where you have the option to take calculus, you won't be able to say that. I do have a question for our panelists, just about thinking about when students need an intervention or when students want to jump a track, right? And get support or enough math instruction to jump into a different track. Let's say they don't take algebra in 8th grade, but in 9th grade, they say to themselves, oh, all these other kids are taking geometry, I want to get there. Is that how possible is that? What districts have used interventions to support students, whether that be just supporting them to accelerate or just supporting them to think about moving to a different track? Paige, I'm going to start with you on that question.
That's a great question. That is one of our big priorities for this first implementation year for Senate Bill 2124. One of our priorities at Commit is to ensure that when we're thinking about implementing Senate Bill 2124, it's not just compliance-based in terms of moving students into the appropriate math course that's required by the state, but it's honestly about doing what's best for students and allowing students lots of kind of flexibility within these pathways to ensure that we're meeting students' needs and we're holding them to a high standard of rigor, whatever their proficiency ability may be. So I don't have a list necessarily of districts that are doing have a really robust way to allow students to move between pathways, but I will say that all of our partner districts across Dallas County are currently thinking really strategically about what kind of summer supports can be offered or summer courses can be offered. How can we do kind of block schedules during the school day so that students are taking 1 or 2 math courses at a time to kind of accelerate them if that's something that they're interested in doing. And if they've demonstrated proficiency, maybe later in the pathway than just 5th grade.
Thanks. Ma Bernadette, I know you talked a lot about different kinds of interventions that are available in Santa Clara County. Do you want to add more in regard to that question about supporting students to help them accelerate and what you've seen as being maybe the most useful?
The most useful for us here, Julia, because I know this is a commitment for the child, especially because oftentimes we ask what really is appropriate, right? How is that looking like when it comes to a child or especially a parent sometimes who's trying to advocate for a jump from one course to the next, or probably even 2 courses above. And so sometimes kids really are into that commitment to do that. And so we are trying to ensure that if they are committed to making those decisions for acceleration, that parents are also involved in that. So parents are going to be involved. Number 2, we also, districts that I've seen here within East Side, also trying to make that commitment so that not just parents and so on, but it's also the community with those summer programs and bridges that we do, that they also try to attend those because we offer them during summer and throughout the school year. So that could also be potential for kids to be able to be supported in case that decision is made for them or that they are making those decisions for them as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you, Pamela, for sending that clarification. Yes, I kind of misspoke there. Most universities do not require calculus, although some certainly do. But then there are some that just require them for certain majors. So if students do want to go into STEM majors, calculus is often a requirement. And Pamela provided a great link for you all there too. So if you look into the Q&A to just equations, thank you. You can take a look. So Denise asked another question that I'm going to end us with since we're nearly at time. And that's just a question about school counselors. Counselors are a really important target for potential interventions that can support students. So what type of outreach and support do you know is provided to counselors in your context to help them be better advocates for more effective and efficient placement of students? Ma Bernadette, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I know we are trying, we really are trying to engage more our counselors, knowing that they have a very, I would say very impactful moments with kids in terms of those decisions made for them and with them as well. So for mathematics, we have been trying to integrate that into our the California Mathematics Science Computer Science grant, so that not just families, but also administrators and counselors are part of that decision making in terms of meaningful mathematics offered to our kids. I do know, not in math, but in computer science, because they're also advocating for computer science for all, we have cohorts of counselors right now who are meeting together to know more about advocacy for, I know it's computer science, but also there's so much integration and connection between computer science and mathematics. So those conversations are happening. For me, I say we have to do more in that aspect. So thank you, Julia. Yeah.
Thank you. And Paige, in our last minute, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm going to say that I think Ma Bernadette answered that beautifully, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Some of you asked some questions that we weren't able to answer today, so I really appreciate your engagement and your interest. If you want to reach out to me, there's my email and there's my co-lead's email. She leads the American Mathematics Educator Study with me, Elizabeth Steiner. And also, if you want to contact our panelists, just feel free to reach out to me and I can provide contact information for them. Well, thank you guys so much for participating. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.